Hi everyone, and welcome to Power and Freedom. I'm Allanah Hunt, founder of Power and Freedom and powerandfreedom.com. Thank you for joining me today. It's another sunny Tuesday. I really appreciate you coming on by. So we're going to talk about something called the belief principle today. And really what this is about is that you can never go further than you believe that you can. So the belief principle is actually what's guiding your life. It's fundamentally, it's a foundational system, if you like, that every part of your life comes from. So when we talk about beliefs, and if you're in the personal development world, you've probably heard the term beliefs, but really what it is, it's a set of understandings. It's a set of things that you believe, and it's everything. You know, it's not just certain things. It's pretty much how we show up in the world and how we understand the world to be. Because although it's very easy to think that what we see outside of ourselves and the way that we see the world is reality, we've all got a different reality. And that's the rub. You know, we kind of think, well, this is just how the world is, how we see it is how it is, but it's actually just how you see it. And if you're hearing that for the first time, it's really hard to get your head around. You're like, yeah, but it's real. It is real. I can see it everywhere. Everywhere I look at, you know, it's absolutely real. But what happens is that we see the world through the understandings that we already have. Your brain is understanding things after years. There's all sorts of things that have been introduced, our parents, teachers, the people in our lives, society, and it teaches us things about the world. And we'll be talking about this on other videos. But today I wanted to really address the belief principle and how it impacts your life and how you can begin to recognize the understandings and the deep beliefs that are actually creating your reality or the reality that you see. Because it's all about perception. Perception is the way that we see things. It doesn't make it true. It just makes it true for you. And so when I talk about not being able to go further than you believe you can, what I'm saying here is that these foundational understandings or beliefs that you hold, they're subconscious. So you might, let me give you an example. So you say, well, I would like to, I'd like to be a lawyer. Okay, so you're growing up and you decide you'd like to be a lawyer, but you've grown up in a family with parents who are perhaps manual workers, or they work in retail, or the whole family has always just done a certain type of job. And so it's very difficult for a lot of people to imagine that they could be a lawyer. Now, you might say that's really what I want, and you want it with every ounce of your being, and you're really determined that this is where you want to go in your life. But what can happen is that unconscious programming or conditioning, or the way that you understand the world to be, the way you were raised, it's not possible to be a lawyer, because this is what we do. We work in shops, or, you know, certain parts of the country, maybe not so much now, but certainly historically, maybe all your family worked in a mine. So that you would grow up and you would go work in the mine. I mean, it's a set of expectations. That's just what we do. So there's some deep kind of understandings about what is possible or what is likely for your life. And so these deep understandings, even though you say to yourself you want to be a lawyer, you have to work really hard to be that lawyer, not just because it's hard work going to university and all of that, but actually you've got to break through some understandings that are deeply programmed and conditioned in your life. And the rub with this is that often we're just not aware that we have these beliefs and understandings. Although on the top layer, on the layer that's in your conscious brain, you're like, yeah, I want to be a lawyer. I can see myself being a lawyer, and you can maybe visualize yourself being a lawyer. There's something that's a little bit deeper than you, that's sitting in your unconscious or in your subconscious, that kind of thinks, well, that's just not possible for me, or it's not possible for my family. My family's never done that. And so for some people, the rare people who really want it and can transcend or move beyond those understandings, they're able to actually make that happen. But for so many people, what actually shows up is that these deep core understandings and beliefs, if you like, are actually the things that create your reality. And maybe you don't become a lawyer. No matter how much you'd like to be one, you may not become one, because in actual fact, the groove that you're in and the thinking that you're in says you're going to go work in a shop. And so what can happen is that even though you work hard at school and you're determined to get the results, this is sometimes where we hear about something called self-sabotage. And self-sabotage is when we kind of, because we believe something really deeply, or we have a deep understanding, it's actually that deep understanding that overrides what it is that we want. So what can happen is that because your brain needs to prove that what it understands about the world is actually true, it'll create and drive your behavior and drive your emotions in such a way that you create the very result that you don't want. So maybe you don't do so well in your exams, or maybe something happens and you're unable to sit the exam, or you find yourself in a situation where suddenly the life plan that you really wanted for yourself is no longer possible. So that's where self-sabotage comes in. It's not a deliberate thing. Hey, if you want to be a lawyer and you want it with everything in your, everything that you are, you're not going to deliberately put something in the way of that. But there's some things that are happening in your unconscious and in your subconscious that are actually creating your reality. Angie's just saying, it's always interesting to me that we fear success, so we sabotage ourselves. Yeah, and it could be fear. And often it is fear, but it isn't always. And I think there's a lot of talk about, what your fears are. But it's not always fears. Sometimes you're not afraid of the success, or you're not afraid of failure. It's just that there's programming that's so deep that you're unaware of it. You're never going to be able to, or it's going to be very difficult to tie the idea that you're afraid of the success that you want, because it isn't really a fear. It's everything in you is in alignment. You absolutely want it, except for this really deep unconscious conditioning or understanding. And that's actually what's creating the results, no matter how much you want it on the outside. Not always about fear. And, a lot of people talk about fear. And what I found in my work with people is that, sometimes we go in and we think, well, what is it that you're afraid of? Or what is it that you fear? And actually there is no fear. Sometimes it's denial. I get that. But sometimes there is no fear. Absolutely everything in you is going for it, and you absolutely want it. And it's not a fear so much as a deep conditioning that's actually standing in the way of you achieving what you want, even though you really want it. Joanna's just saying we can sabotage anything that's good for us because sometimes we feel that we're not worthy. Yeah, and worthiness again is it's not something conscious. Yeah, and this is really what I'm trying to get through with this belief principle, is that so much of this stuff is not conscious. In fact, most of it, if you said that 10% of what shows up in the world is as a result of your conscious choices or your conscious awareness, that's probably about right. 90%, 80, 90% of it comes from core stuff that you're probably not even aware of. That goes back to your childhood. It goes to other people's understandings that they have projected on you. And, when we're learning and when we're growing, we take what we're told, what we're taught, and it becomes a truth, right? We internalize it, we make it a truth for us. That's how it works. And so those truths that we see the results of, which become our reality, the reality that we see that isn't really a reality at all, but simply a perception, remembering that your brain will always show you what you're asking it to show you, not asking it to show you with your conscious mind, but what you've asked it to show you in your unconscious mind. And so when we want to shift something that we begin to recognize is standing in the way of what we want, we have to start with a conscious brain, because we can't really access our unconscious or our subconscious brain straight away. It's kind of below the surface. So when we want to change something, we start with our conscious mind and it trickles down to our unconscious mind. That's exactly how our beliefs and our conditionings and our understandings are formed. We hear something on the outside, we pick it up with our conscious mind, and it trickles down and it integrates and becomes a part of our unconscious and subconscious mind, where it's difficult for us to actually access or be aware of that. Joanna, right, the lies we were told stick with us, who we could be or we couldn't be. Yeah, and they're lies only if you decide they are. Because until you decide that they're not a truth for you, your unconscious mind says it's a truth. It's somebody else's truth. It's not a lie for them. They've told you it because it's true for them. They're trying to probably help you. They're probably trying to teach you. They're probably trying to guide you. So unless you actually look at the truths that we have accepted as ours, that usually come from others, you know, because that's the world we live in, you know, as we learn as children, we're taught this is what walking looks like, this is what talking looks like. All of the things that we learn just in order to be able to function in the world, we are taught, or we model it from other people. And if you know children will model your behavior far more than they will listen to what you have to say. Yeah. So there's this kind of thing in our brain where it's going around, it's picking up all this information. And some of the things that we take on as truth for us, we've never actually been told. We've just had it modeled, or we've seen it demonstrated, or we've seen the choices that somebody's made, and we've made the choices they've made truths for us. Because as a child, we don't have the understanding and the ability to really recognize different sides of something that we have as an adult. Angie's just saying the power of belief, we are way more powerful than we realize. Oh, yes, we are. And really, that's what power and freedom is all about to me. It's about giving you tools and helping you to understand that you are a super, super powerful creator in your life. But we have to become aware of what's happening underneath, because the stuff that's underneath, if we don't bring it into our consciousness, it will continue to run our lives. It will continue to create the results that we see outside of ourselves, or the reality that we see. And which brings me back to, you can never go further than you believe you can. Because even if you really want that success, or you really want to be the lawyer, or you really want to find the love that you know that you want to experience, maybe the relationships that you've had modeled to you don't include the kind of relationship that you would like to have. So whilst you've decided and you know for yourself, this is what I want to experience, your unconscious mind has no frame of reference. It doesn't understand it. It's going to keep finding people that match the relationships you've had modeled to you. Do you understand how, I mean, even when I hear myself say that, even though I know this stuff, it's mind-blowing. It really is mind-blowing how this deep conditioning and understanding is absolutely creating what it is that you experience. And so what our job is to use our conscious mind to begin to understand and uncover what's happening underneath. You know, you might have picked up something somebody did. A parent might have made a decision. They may have had a conversation, and for some reason, maybe they were afraid to make a particular decision, or a belief that they had said, you know, that wasn't possible for them. So you see them making a choice in their life. You may overhear something in a conversation. You may misconstrue that, because we don't always hear things as they are, particularly when we're children. We tend to more be imprinted with the emotion around a situation than the facts and words. And so what can happen is that somebody's making a decision, and as they're making that decision, there's an emotion that's, maybe it's fear, maybe it's anxiety, maybe it's concern, maybe it's anger. And what happens is that emotion that they are feeling imprints this memory on your brain, and it kind of, how do I say this? It forms this understanding that is an absolute truth. Because what is more powerful than our thoughts is emotion. Emotion is energy in motion. And emotion is a result of a thought, but it isn't you. But because it's so powerful, and the more emotion that you feel, but also the more emotion that the people around you feel or show or demonstrate when they're living their lives, the higher that charge, the emotion, energy and motion, the higher and stronger that emotion, the more it imprints that memory and that belief and that understanding in your brain. And it will probably not be something that you will be able to connect with an actual memory. And this is where it's so difficult, because we think this is who we are. We think these are the things that make us us. And so much of how we show up in the world isn't the real us. It's what I like to call other peopleness that sits on the top of who we are. And so it's about peeling the onion. Or when I used, I did a chat a couple of weeks ago called The Reflection Connection. And I was talking about a breadcrumb trail, and you kind of see what shows up in your reality, and you go, okay, so do I like this? Do I not like this? And then you're following the connections backwards to find out, or following a breadcrumb trail home to find out what's happening on the inside that's creating this. What am I thinking? What am I feeling? What am I doing? What are my choices that are creating this experience that I can see now reflected back at me in the mirror? Other peopleness. Yeah. And so unpicking this stuff and finding yourself under other peopleness is not easy. We're talking about this being deep programming. This is unconscious stuff. But when we can begin to find ways to get to these unconscious understandings or unconscious beliefs, then we can unblock our path. We can unblock ourselves. And that's what this is about, yeah? So it's about expanding your vision of what is possible. And when you expand your vision of what is possible for you, you're already halfway there. Or even more, because you know what, if you can get beyond those beliefs and understandings that are fundamental and are standing like roadblocks between you and what you want, if you can recognize those, you can move them. You can shift them. You can change them. You can dynamite them out of your way, if you like, But until you know they're there, they are running your life. And they will continue to run your life. You'll have more awareness subtly, slowly, but surely, you'll begin to understand as you develop as a person. And certainly if you do active work to develop yourself. But, if you don't do that, and this is why so many people are not living lives that they really want, that they're living a repeat of their parents' lives or a repeat of the peers that they grew up with, and it's not just that you're choosing the same thing. Sometimes on the outside, you see things you don't want and you decide you're not going to do that for yourself. But no matter how hard you try, that unconscious or subconscious stuff that's running your life delivers exactly what it is that you don't want. And this is why I've been doing this series just recently, is I want to give you tools to begin to understand what's happening. So some things you can start to do. And, this is not you can't just flick a switch. I'd love to just give you a magic pill or say, hey, just do this and it'll all just go away, because, it's taken your whole life to get here. It's going to take some time to unpick some of this stuff. We want to look at the things that we can see, because if a lot of the stuff is subconscious or unconscious and we can't see it and it's really difficult for us to get to, the only way we can get to it is to look at what we can see, what we can feel, what we can hear. So we're going to be listening to our thoughts. We're going to be raising our awareness and starting to think, what am I thinking? Because, let's go back to the example at the beginning that we were talking about. You decide you want to be a lawyer and your whole family works in retail or works down a mine or something like that. And you've been like that for generations, or they're in the military or whatever. But you've had a family tradition, let's say, of a certain type of expectation when it comes to a career or a job. But you decide you want to break the mold and you want to be a lawyer. So there's some deep programming that you probably won't recognize. You may know if your whole family's talked about, we always just go mining, and maybe they've set up some expectations for you, but you may not recognize that that's actually a part of how you understand the world at a deep level. On the conscious level, you're like, yeah, but I don't want that for myself. I want something different, and I'm going to have something different. Brilliant. But then the self-sabotage I was talking about comes in, and you don't quite, I don't know, you get sick one day and you can't do the exam, or you miss a question, or you misread a question. And it's kind of like, in a way, your brain is delivering you well, actually, all you're ever going to be is a minor, even though you absolutely want to be a lawyer with every ounce of your being. And so when we start to listen to what we're thinking, it's, there's nothing else to go on. We can't access that subconscious or unconscious from where we sit out, out in this conscious world. So we want to listen to what we're thinking. So if you're doing a visualization, let's say we did an actual visualization, you said, I'm going to connect to what it would feel like. I'm going to use the principles in The Secret or the law of attraction, and I'm going to say, I'm going to visualize myself being a lawyer. I'm going to visualize myself in a courtroom, or as a family lawyer, or whatever it is kind of lawyer that you decided you wanted to be. I'm going to visualize myself doing that job. I'm going to connect with the feelings of being a lawyer and doing the job I want to do. So you do this and you start this conscious process. You say, well, I'm going to make time to do this every morning and every night. And you're keeping the vision and you're holding it hard, clearly in your mind. What I want you to think about, what else is in your mind? Because that's not the only thing that's in your brain. It's not the only thought you'll have. Sometimes we can't identify the thought, but what you can maybe begin to understand is, what's the feeling? Cheryl's just saying, yes, that we don't think we deserve the best, that we have to see ourselves there. Yeah, we do. And the thing, when it's really interesting you use that, deserve the best, because again, and this comes up in the imposter syndrome that we've sort of talked about before, but it's not that necessarily that you don't believe that you deserve it. Like, it's not necessarily that it's a fear. It's just unconscious programming. It's unconscious understandings. It's not always about self-esteem. It's not always about fear. And it's very easy to, put this kind of catch-all around things and make out that you need to build your self-esteem, or you need to just build your confidence and then you'll be able to do it. Well, that's not necessarily true, because you could be the most confident person in the world and still not have what you want, or still not be able to create what you want. And what I find really difficult sometimes in this personal development world, and it's really interesting that, the idea of fear and not deserving and unworthiness come up today, because what I'd like to say to that is that I find sometimes when we think about things like that, it's really triggering for people and it's quite judgmental. And I'm not saying anybody here is being judgmental. What I'm saying is this: we constantly project this idea that it's fear, or that that you need to be more confident, or that you just feel unworthy, or whatever. And it's almost like it's disempowering in some ways, and yeah, okay, you want to overcome those things, but being told that you don't feel like you deserve something, is that a truth for you? I've been told that. I've had times in my life where I haven't been really confident, or I felt like I'm a long way away from where I want to be, and someone says, well, you just feel unworthy. I'm like, no, I don't. No, I don't. That's not a truth for me. I know I deserve the best. I've worked hard to get to the point where I know I deserve the best, but there's still something standing in my way. And so let's just look at some of these things about the idea of not deserving the best, or being unworthy, or this being about fear. And I'm just going to say to you, is that true? Or is that something you've been told that you've internalized as a truth for you? Because even the things that we see as good truths might not be true. And so anything that makes you feel smaller or less, question it. I know that sometimes we're unaware of what's going on underneath, and that's really what we're talking about today. But it doesn't mean that you feel unworthy, or that you feel undeserving, or that you're afraid of success. It doesn't mean that. It may mean that, But there's a good chance that actually, if you're wanting success and you want to show up in the world, there's a good chance you're not afraid. There's a good chance you know you deserve this. There's a good chance that you know that you're worthy of it. And it's something else. Something that has nothing to do with you. You can give yourself permission to drop the stuff that makes you feel small. You don't need that stuff in your head. There's enough people trying to put you down without you internalizing something that isn't true for you. If it's true for you, fine. But I want you to question whether it's true for you, because I hear this all the time. You know, the imposter syndrome, you feel unworthy or you feel undeserving. Really? Because I think anybody who goes out there and wants to follow their dreams and wants to be more than who they have been, who wants to improve, I don't think there's any fear there. I don't think there's any feeling of unworthiness there. So ask yourself that question. Cheryl's just saying, my parents were perfectionists and I could never do good enough. They were critical of everything and it's taken me a long time to grow out of that self-critic mode. Yeah, but it's not about you. It's not that you don't think you're worthy. There's an old pattern replaying. There's a belief, there's an understanding. But it's not you who doesn't think you're worthy or deserving. Yeah. And I just want to make the differentiation. I know it's easy to kind of put it all in the bag and say, well, yeah, that's what we're talking about. We're not saying this is about me. We're saying this is about conditioning. Yeah, it is. But I think it's important to separate yourself from the beliefs and from the conditioning and from these understandings. They are not you. And even just sometimes when you begin to separate that and recognize it isn't you, it allows you to step away from it. And the minute you create some space between you and the stuff you've been told and the understandings that have been formed wherever they've come from, the minute you create some space, you can breathe. You can see yourself, you can feel yourself, you can be present in you under the other peopleness. Cheryl's saying, I needed this today, Allanah. It's interesting how things go. You are not your beliefs. Absolutely, Angie. But it's really hard sometimes to separate ourselves from that stuff when we don't recognize that it's even showing up or that it's even there. So if you go back to this idea of, you want to be a lawyer and you're doing the visualization technique, so listen to what other thoughts are going on in your mind, because you're visualizing and you're trying to hook into the feeling of, I'm standing in this courtroom and I'm delivering my closing argument. Let's say, let's say you wanted to be a court lawyer or a barrister. And you're standing there and you're delivering your closing argument, and you can see yourself orating and speaking in a way that's really persuasive, and you're doing your absolute best job and you're going to win, and you're completely connecting with that feeling, right? But underneath that, there's something else. Maybe there's another thought, maybe there's another feeling. So whilst you're focusing on this feeling of I'm giving my closing argument and I'm going to win this, there's a little bit of uncertainty or a little bit of anxiety ticking away in the background. It's telling you something. While all your energy is focused on the visualization of what you want, there's still anxiety. What's the anxiety? What's your brain saying? Hold on a minute. Your brain is going, oh, you haven't done this before? Your brain is going, red flag, red flag. It doesn't match our conditioning. It doesn't match what we know. Be afraid. Are you sure you want to do this? That's what your brain's job is, yeah? It's to show you anytime you're doing something that's outside of what it already knows and what it understands your experience to be, it's going to go red flag. And there's anxiety that's attached with that red flag. It doesn't mean it's something you shouldn't do. It doesn't mean that you need to be afraid. It's just your brain telling you, you haven't done this before. And you go, thank you so much, brain, for reminding me I haven't done this before. I really appreciate you taking amazing care of me, but this is something I really want to do. And I really like your support and help. So I'm going to keep visualizing this, and I'm going to feel that anxiety, and I recognize it's there. And you know what? Why don't you show me what that's about? I'm going to hook into that anxiety for a minute. I'm going to follow that feeling. Where does that go? What is the thought that sits behind it? What is the thought telling me about what I thought I knew about the world, or what I've learned about the world? Because when you follow that back and you hear what the thought is and what the understanding is, you can go, well, that's not true, right? That's not true. That was never true. But you didn't even know it was there. When you begin to create some space between what's in your head or in your body, or the conditioning and understandings, the anxiety, what is it? Everything that you feel is a feedback system from your brain or from your body. It's letting you know what you're thinking. It's letting you know what needs to be changed or altered, or what's going on the inside, and so that you can become aware and shift it to a healthier place. What's happening in your body, the symptoms that we feel, the headache that we have, the backache that we have, you know, the pain in the knee, the sore stomach, it's not always anxiety. Sometimes it's just a little bit of pain or discomfort in the body. It's telling you something. Is letting you know you're thinking something or you're feeling something, and it's showing up in your body. It's the only way that your brain and your body can show you what's going on. Cheryl's saying our monkey mind, our ego and fear step out of that comfort zone. Yeah, I mean, it's funny actually. My partner is on Friday. He's been invited to a kind of a stag do for the son of a mate of his, and they're going to do a tandem parachute jump. So it's the first time he's ever done anything like this, right? And his mate sent him a clip. It's a video by Will Smith. You might have seen it. It did the rounds on Facebook, and what he's talking about is going parachuting. And he's talking about how the night before you're lying in bed and you're really anxious and you're worried and you're like, oh my goodness, you know, and then you get into the plane and then everybody's there and it's terrifying. And suddenly you realize that I've never been in a plane before that's in the sky and the door is open. I mean, doors are not meant to be open when I'm in a plane. That's just, you know, freaky stuff. And so there's all this fear and all this terror, and you've got the parachute on your back and you're in this really unfamiliar environment, and people are starting to leap out the plane and you can see the numbers dwindling and it's going to be your turn next, right? And the guy that you're strapped to is walking you to the edge of the door in this plane, and you're at 14,000 feet. And everything, your brain's going red flag, like, you know, 50 million red flags here, and there's massive anxiety and terror and fear and oh my goodness, and all the things that might go wrong are going round and round in your head, okay? And you get to the door, and the guy that you're strapped to, your tandem instructor's going 1, 2, and he doesn't wait till 3, he jumps because he knows you're going to grab hold of the rail when you get to 3, so he jumps out. And in that moment there's sheer terror, but you know, just a second later, this is how Will Smith talks about it. He says, you're flying. And in the moment that you should, the way that you understand it, should have experienced the most fear, you in fact experience the most exhilaration. So all that fear leading up to, oh my God, I'm going to jump out of a plane at 14,000 feet. What was that for? What a waste of energy. And understand, and I'm not saying you can just suspend all of that, because this is part of what's happening in your physiology. Your brain's going, oh my goodness, are you sure you want to do this? I'm really, really not thinking this is a good idea based on what I already know about, gosh, you know, when you jump out of a plane, you could die. You could be crippled. This could happen. So your brain's telling you all these things, and you might not hear it, but you'll certainly feel it in your body. But you don't have to act from that. You don't have to step into that emotion of fear. Thank you, brain, for showing me that I haven't done this before. Thank you for reminding me that this could be a bad move. Thank you for showing me what it is that I already think I know. But you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm absolutely going to do this. And, if you're going to go up in a plane and you're going to jump tandem out of an open door, you're going to push through that fear. And it's about recognizing it for what it is. It's simply a replay, a feedback, there's a word that's just fallen out of my head that I was going to say, but it's simply a symptom. It isn't you. So all of these things that you can begin to create separation. So it's becoming aware of your thoughts, becoming aware of your emotions. So even when you're in this space of, I want to create actively, I want to use the law of attraction, I want to use a secret to create what it is that I really and truly want in my life, even when you're in that process, keep a little part of you that's actually almost analyzing and going, what else is happening here? What else am I thinking? What else am I feeling? Is there anxiety? Do I feel a bit sick in my stomach? Do I feel a bit spacey? Do I feel a bit dizzy? Are my fingers tingling? What else is happening? Thanks, Angie. Great story. Yeah, it's a true one. Let's see how he gets on Friday. I think he's a little bit afraid, but in this case, I can't let the guys down. I have to be seen to be the editor, and I'm sure I'll have a brilliant time. But it's funny how all those things come to play when we make our decisions. But if you check it out, Will Smith uses that very example, and he just explains so beautifully that what's on the other side of fear is everything that you want. But as I said, it's not always fear, it's not always unworthiness, and it's not always a sense of being undeserving. It's literally the stuff that you've accepted throughout your life, the truths that you've taken in that have formed the foundation of your life. And it's about going, well, you know what? I need to discover what those things are, because I bet a lot of this stuff isn't true. And we were talking at the beginning and we said, 10% of what we create in our lives is conscious and 90% is unconscious. I need to know what that 90% is. Because if I don't understand the 90% that's creating the reality of my life, I've only got 10% creative power in my life. Well, that's not enough for me. I don't know about you, but I want a lot more power than that, and I have a lot more power than that. And so what I'm doing is I'm stripping away the stuff that isn't me, so that I can be more me, and I can be more in alignment with what I want, and I can create more quickly, more powerfully, more actively. Love Will Smith. Yeah, he's awesome. He really is awesome. And it's funny how we see somebody. I mean, I remember watching him years ago as the Fresh Prince of BelAir. My kids loved the show, and he was just this kind of slightly gangly guy and a bit of a laugh. And you've seen him in the movies, and he's obviously been very successful. But he hasn't done that by magic. And the principles that he's used in his life to create the success that he's created for himself, and he's encouraging other people to do that. And I think, that's really what it is. It's stepping into that power, the creative power that you have. What we have to do first sometimes, though, is get rid of the stuff that isn't us, the stuff that's sitting on top of the power that we have. Yeah. And as we do that, we can harness that power in a very deliberate and conscious way. Instead of it being the unconscious and subconscious that's creating our reality, we're creating it much more consciously. We are reprogramming our conscious and our unconscious and subconscious mind so that they're working for us, not against us. Not that they're our enemy, because it's all a part of us, and actually your unconscious and subconscious brain is looking after you all the time. It's showing you what you've told it wants to see. The fact that you don't remember telling it or that you've taken on somebody else's truth is kind of where we've got this oxymoron of, you like, or it's the rub. But as you begin to uncover what's actually happening, what's actually sitting underneath, what are those unconscious and subconscious things that are running your life, then you're taking that 10% that you're currently able to access and moving it up to 20%, 30%, and you're beginning to really create with all the power of the universe that is at your disposal. So getting rid of those blocks, the belief principle, you can never go further than you believe you can. Begin to shift what it is that you believe. Start to have a look, see what's showing up, use the reflection connection, follow that back, have a look at what it is that's sitting underneath it. Listen to your thoughts, listen to your emotions. Cheryl's saying the junk and the trunk, get rid of it Yeah, absolutely. And Joanna's saying, yeah, I love the show too. Yeah, but it's amazing how much he's built and all the momentum, positive tasks. Yeah, and Will Smith is an awesome example of somebody who is able to get the blocks out of their way, to get out of their own way, if you like, and create what it is that they want. And I think we all want that. We all want to harness that. We see people showing up. We hear the law of attraction. We hear about The Secret, and they're like, why is this not happening for me? I know this stuff works. I see the results of it in other people's lives. Why is this not happening for me? I'm doing everything it says, but it's still not happening. I'm visualizing, I'm imagining, I'm tying into the feeling of having it now. I'm in the zone. Because there's something underneath, there's something stronger and deeper and more powerful, if you like. I mean, you have ultimate power. This is just something that is programmed, and you can change the programming. And as you change the programming, you change your reality, you change the results of your life, and you really can harness that power that's yours to create exactly what you want when you want it. So the belief principle: have a think about what you're thinking, have a listen to your emotions, feel in your body what's going on, and follow it back. Begin to ask yourself some questions. What's going on here? And as you begin to see the truths, or the truths that, or the things that your unconscious and subconscious mind have adopted as the truth, you can go, well, that's not the truth. That was never the truth. That doesn't resonate with me. Just like I said, you know, this idea of feeling like I don't deserve something, that's not a truth for me. But people keep sort of, maybe if you're struggling, you know, to manifest things, and we all have times where there's things that we want that, you know, just aren't showing up the way we want them to, and people go, well, you know, yeah, obviously you don't feel like you're worthy. I'm like, yeah, no, that's not true. I've worked really hard to get to here, just like Cheryl says as well. And you know, so ask yourself some questions. Don't just accept more of these things that people are telling you. Ask yourself if that's true for you. If you feel that you're worthy, if you're out there and you're pushing the boundaries, then you already know that, and you're not afraid. There's something else going on, something deeper, and something that you can shift and you can change, and start looking inside and seeing what those things are. And I promise you, you will find out some amazing things that you just go, oh my goodness, I never knew I thought that. I never knew I believed that. I never knew I understood the world like that. That's got nothing to do with me. I can dump that, get rid of the junk in the trunk, you know. Time to move on. And so that is the belief principle. I thank you everybody for being here and for commenting. It's just been a pleasure to have this conversation with you today, and I'm always surprised at quite what shows up, you know, as we get started talking and where things end up. But I hope it's been helpful for you in some way. And once again, thank you so much, and I will speak to you on Thursday.